Okay, well, I'm going to talk about Josephine Dukes today. And Josephine Dukes was the first white woman to come to this part of Montana and live here continuously until she died. I do have to refer to my notes because, at this age, I forget a lot. I just don't remember these dates very well. So I'll start in I was born in 1838 in Florissant, Missouri, and my brother, Robert A. Pelkey, had been out here working on the Mullen Road in the late 1850s or early 1860s, and he purchased some land out at Grass Valley, and he came back to Florissant, which is close to St. Louis, and he told the family, he says, he said, it's so beautiful out there in Montana, we really should all just move out there. So I was married. I had been married to my husband, Peter Meininger, and we had a little boy who was about 2 years old. And so we decided, okay, we'll go out to Montana. And my sister-in-law, Robert's wife, and I, and my mother, Renee Queen Pelkey, we're just going to go out to Montana. And so we started out and everything was going fine until we got to, my little boy's name was Tommy, and we got to Fort Hall, and boy, Peter he just didn't have any experience helping wagons and horses and wagons cross the river on the Snake River there. And going across the Snake River, why it got kind of hectic, and my sister-in-law and I and my little boy were in one wagon, and Peter was trying to take the horses across the river, and darned, the horse came up and hit Peter and knocked him under. And we waited around, tried to find Peter, and we couldn't find him, and we waited around. Hi, how are you doing? Come on up. I'm just beginning this story, so I'll just continue. And my husband, and we were crossing the Snake River down in Idaho, and my husband, he drowned in the Snake River as we were coming out here. And so my little boy and I and my sister-in-law were in the wagon bed, and the river lifted that wagon bed up off the wheels, and we started floating down the river. And here comes, we thought we were in for trouble, and we finally hit a sandbar, and an Indian, bless his heart, came out and saved us and got us back to shore. But we lost a lot of our supplies that way and that day, and so we thought, well, we've waited 2 days, looked for Peter, and that was my husband, and he obviously drowned, and we decided, well, we had to go on. So we came on, and my brother, Robert, had purchased some land out here at Grass Valley. And I thought, what am I going to do? Here I am, a widow, and I have a 2-year-old little boy. What am I going to do to support us? And, well, I had packed in one of the trunks that survived. I had a couple of dresses that I had brought from St. Louis, and why I brought dresses from St. Louis out here, pretty dresses, I don't know. But anyway, it came in useful because I took the skirt off one of the dresses and I made a flag. And I hung the flag up, and I thought, I know how to bake. There are very few women, 3 women out here, and look at all these men out here, and I know how to bake. And so I baked pies, and I sold pieces of pie for a $5 gold piece per slice. Yeah, you laugh at that. Sounds outrageous, doesn't it? But in 1861, flour, very poor flour, was going for $30 a hundred, and those guys didn't know how to bake pies, but I did. And so I sold the pies and made some money. And you have to excuse me, because once I'm going to have to refer to my notes here, because at my age, how can we remember what our kids did, and we did that long ago. And so then in the spring, I came out here and and landed. There's this beautiful spot at out by Hell's Gate where Warden Higgins had the store, and the two rivers come together. And I could see the Indians coming through, migrating from up north down to the Bitterroot and back, and it was just such a beautiful sight. It was a beautiful place. And by spring, I had met this fellow by the name of George P. White, and we got married. We were the first white man and white woman to be married in the territory. And our records are up at the university. They have this university here now, and our marriage record is up there. And Brooks married us, and they called him Bishop Brooks after that. But I have to tell you about our wedding. It was in the spring. It was in March, and it had been a horribly cold winter. And, you know, it was so exciting. We were going to have something to look forward to. And, well, Captain Grant, he'd gone on over to Walla Walla for something, and he had, up at his ranch, the fellow who was taking care of his ranch, he says, now I've got these chickens here. And he says, don't you let anything happen to those chickens. Don't you sell them. Don't you do anything. I'll be back. I want those chickens here when I come back. Well, this fellow, you know, Frank Woody, and a fellow by the name of Sterney Blake, they thought, what are we going to do? Well, there's chickens up there. So they went up there, and we had chicken dinner that night for our wedding. And somebody asked, well, how'd you get the chicken? And they said, well, Woody talks so much, the poor man just was glad to be rid of us, let us go, you know. So we had chicken for chicken dinner for our wedding, and then Sterney Blake stole the wedding cake, and so the big thing, you know. It was a really good, exciting time. Well, so we had this cabin. The cabin still exists out at Hell's Gate, and here's a picture of me later on, but here's our cabin, and it's still a residence. There are people living it, and that's me with a couple of my daughters. But here's where the cabin was, and we had, you know, the history books or legend says that George P. White had 3 sons born in 3 different states. And that's what the history legend is. Well, that's even in Ripley's Believe It or Not back here. I've got that back here somewhere. Right there. You can come up here and look. It says 3-state log cabin, Missoula, Montana, and lists my children, or George's children. He had those. Well, you know what? George didn't have those kids. I did. I was there too, but it didn't matter at that time, you know. But anyway, so, and I have to preface this by saying that I worked at the Missoula County Courthouse for 33 years, and I was in charge of the Records Management Department. So I had to find out if those 3 children were all born in that same cabin in 3 different states. Well, none of them were born in a state, any state, because 2 of them were born, they were all born in the cabin, but one was born in Idaho Territory, one was born in Montana Territory. None of them were born in Montana, because I would have been past childbearing age if I was still having children then. We became a state in 1889, so no. But anyway, we had 5 children in that cabin, and Richard's over here, and George is down there, and Agnes, the wife of my son William, is over there. Then this one is my granddaughter, Georgie, and this is my stone over here. But anyways, I have to turn the page, find out my dates. I'm sorry. I have to tell you about Hell's Gate. The second building up at Hell's Gate, of course, when I got there, Warden and Higgin had their store there already on the Mullen Road. And when I got there, and then in 1861, a fellow by the name of P.J. Bolte built a saloon up there, right in Hell's Gate. And here's Hell's Gate right here. There's the town, and here's where my cabin was. And anyway, Bolte built a saloon up there, and in November Was it married? It's November. I don't remember what month it was that he built that. But anyways, he had this saloon up there, and it was January. And it was cold, and at night I heard hammering and I heard sawing, and I thought, what is going on? And I looked up there, because you can see it's just a little ways up there. And here's all these lanterns, these men, they're constructing something, but I thought, I'm not going to go out and look and see what it is. Well, the next morning I went out there, and here's 3 guys hanging up there. That was Cyrus Skinner, Carter, and I forget the other man's name. I'll have to look for that. But anyway, 3 guys, and that was the first. And then the next morning, when I went out the next morning, the vigilantes went up to Baron O'Keefe's place and brought Bob Zachary down, and they hanged him up there too. And that was the last hanging by trial in the vigilantes here in the state of in the territory of Montana. Got to switch the page over here, see where I am. And like I said, our 3 sons were born up there. None of them were born in a state, so we know that. But we had 2 little girls up there also. And one of them was Mary Rosetta. She ended up dying a little bit later, but our other daughter's name was Lily, and we called her Lily White. And I just had to tell that story because Lily White was such a precious little girl. Father Ravalli was a neighbor of ours up there. Of course, St. Michael's Church up at Hell's Gate was the first church built in the territory of Montana specifically for Anglo whites, not the white family, but for Anglos, And so there was a cemetery up there also, and Father Ravalli would visit there, and I would travel with him as a midwife, and we became very dear friends. One of my best friends was an Indian woman by the name of Katuna. And in 1877, when the Indians came through, the Nez Perce came through, and they were coming through very peacefully, but the army was following them, and it kind of threw everybody here in a panic, and well, we better go to the hills and hide. Well, of course, and I said, Katuna took me up there, but then it was in the newspapers even that we could come home, it was safe, and of course there was no confrontation up Lolo Creek like they had predicted, and that didn't affect us anymore after that. But George and I had a butcher shop down on Front Street here also. We still lived out at Hell's Gate, but we had a butcher shop on Front Street, and we sold that to Alfred Mailer in '70. And I have to tell you this because we sold it to him for $1,000, good clean dust, and the terms were that he would pay us $400 in June and $200 good clean dust in August, and finish up the last $400 good clean dust in September. And that's how transactions were made, was good clean dust, That's it. The smokehouse burned up there, but it didn't burn our house, but we lost 2,000 pounds of meat, which hurt us pretty bad. Then George got sick, and this was in 1871. He got sick, and it was just pretty tragic because the doctors did everything they could for him, but they couldn't save him, and so he died, and I was widowed for the second time, and now I had 6 children, 5 by George and 1 by my first husband, Peter. Well, it was kind of hard, but that's how life was here. That's how life was. And in 1872, Ed Dukes and I got married. And we got married in December. And we didn't have a big party or anything at that time, but it was noted, ironically it was noted, that he was not Catholic. Now, Josephine was very religious. The church was very important to them. As I said, the church was just a very short ways away from the property, and the cemetery was there. And George In his obituary, says that he was buried at the Catholic cemetery. Now, I've been over to the Catholic cemetery here, and they have a record that he's buried there, but they don't know where, or they don't know. So, question in my mind is, was he buried at the Catholic cemetery by the church out at Hell's Gate, which is now the church, that church is now at Fort Missoula. But I would like to know, because that cemetery existed for quite some years after the church was moved. Anyway, we had some land out at Frenchtown, or we owned part interest in the Pioneer Flouring Mill out at Frenchtown, and that area out there was just so good. It was so fertile for growing grain that some of the grain out there won prizes at the World Fair, and that we ended up having to sell that, but we did have a part interest in that. And then George, in October, we had 3 children. Not George, Edwin. Edwin and I had 3 children, so then I was the mother of 9. And in '82, same time of year as this, this time to get the crops in, and Ed came down with smallpox. And the doctor was treating him. He treated him for 10 days, and finally he says, you're getting better. So Ed's out there, and the neighbors are all helping get the crops in, and so Ed went out and started helping, and he told the man, he says, I don't think I feel very good. I'm just going to go lay down over there and rest by the hay stack for a little while. Well, he died. So here I am, widowed 3 times with 9 children, and that's just, I learned to take things just that way. That's just how things were. Well, then in 1893, City of Missoula is putting the water mains in downtown, and I did have some property down there, but anyway, they had this trench dug, and it was about 4 feet deep. It was a dark night, and they hadn't put flashers up. They hadn't put any barricade up or anything. There were no lights, and I fell in the ditch, and I got hurt pretty bad. I hurt my head and my shoulder and my leg and hip, and I went to the doctor, and for quite a while the doctor was treating me, and finally he says, you know what, Josephine, you're just going to be crippled the rest of your life. And I couldn't do that. I had always worked hard, and it was very difficult to be crippled. And so, talking with the doctor, while he's consulting with him, we decided I should sue the City of Missoula. So I did. I sued the City of Missoula for $10,000, and I won. I got $150. Well, you know what? 2 weeks later, some man walking down the same thing happened to him, exactly the same circumstances. He sued the City of Missoula for $5,000, and he won. He got $500. So that's just how it was, And I died in 1903 from apoplexy. But I have to tell you some of the things that happened when I was living out at Hell's Gate. Hell's Gate existed from 1860 to 1865, and the population was never more than 14 people, and the average population was 12. And there were only 7 buildings at Hell's Gate at that time. And I think I told you about the hangings out there. Well, that was the last hanging by vigilantes, a legal hanging by execution by hangings. And I don't know if I told you that the first church for white people was built out there. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then, but these hangings, nobody, and then they had, in the 2 years between 64 and 65, they had 9 or 10 violent deaths. There were no natural deaths at that time. And I'm thinking that maybe that's why my husband George was made the coroner, but I don't know if that's why he was a coroner or not. But Anyway, that's the story of Josephine Dukes. And I have to also tell you this, that, as I said, I worked at the county with the records. And in doing that, we microfilmed a lot of the records and a lot of the probate records. And now, you two are man and wife, I assume? Well, when you die, you'll have separate probate numbers, as well the rest of us have separate probate numbers. Well, in microfilming these early probate records, and this is in 1883, one of my staff came up and she said, look at this. She says, we have the estate of George P. White, my second husband, has two numbers. He's number 44 and number 48. And look at this. Here's the estate of Edwin Dukes, my third husband. He has the numbers for probate numbers 44 and 48. And we're thinking, what is this? Why do these two men share probate numbers? And we thought, was there a gay community? We didn't know, you know. And if so, what's up? So each of these items down here is an entry in the probate. So we started reading down through, and this woman named Josephine, she's petitioning the court to get guardianship of these children. And we're wondering why. Come to find out, she's their mother. And in 1888, because she had been married to both of these men and had children by both of them, she had to petition the courts to get custody of her, or guardianship of her own children. And I thought, this is a good story, you know. This is a good story. How many women came out here, had the same kind of hardships that they faced, widows, losing husbands, children, and how do you raise these children, and then to have to petition the court to get guardianship of your own children. I thought this is a story that needs to be told, and that's why I'm telling this story. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions? Thank you.